Imagine almost dying. Imagine being homeless. Imagine serving in the Marine Corps in force recon and then living to tell the story. And today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about owning a business. We're going to talk about the importance of fatherhood, all these kinds of things with T.Shane Johnson. T.Shane, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you. Just for reference, I was not force. I was battalion. I don't want to get.
Oh, I thought you said but
I was
battalion
battalion. No,
recon.
no, just
Okay.
greenside. Yeah, I don't want to get. I don't want to get roughed up about that one. So no, just battalion. I was just with battalion. Okay.
All right. All right. Well, thank you for clarifying. I always love it when people clarify too, because you don't want to get things wrong. But welcome to, I believe, almost this 200th episode of Stories of Service, Ordinary People Who Do Extraordinary Work. I am the host of Stories of Service, Teresa Carpenter. And to get this episode started, as we always do, here is an intro from my father, Charli Picker.
From the moment we're born and lock eyes with our parents, we are inspiring others. By showing up as a vessel of service, we not only help others, we help ourselves. Welcome to S.O.S, Stories of Service, hosted by Teresa Carpenter, here from ordinary people from all walks of life who have transformed their communities by performing extraordinary work.
And today we're talking with T.Shane Johnson, who is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, entrepreneur, motivated speaker, and best-selling author. Today he'll open up about his extraordinary journey from surviving a brutal gang attack and homelessness to building a successful business empire and making a national impact. How are you doing today, T.Shane?
I'm doing great. Your dad's got an amazing voice.
Well, he did make his living in broadcasting. That probably comes as no surprise. Yeah. And he was a DJ from 1960 to 1970 after serving at Armed Forces and radio television in Panama. And then growing up, he was a voiceover artist. So he would go to various ad agencies and tell stories and use voices. And so it's a real full circle moment for me now to be a podcaster after having him as a father. So, yeah. So first off, I always love to ask my guests a little bit about their origin story. So I would love to know, I know you're from Florida, but tell the audience a little bit about where you were born and raised and why the Marine Corps.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Arcadia, Florida. Most of you, when you think of Florida, you think of the beaches. Florida predominantly, the way I grew up anyways, was cattle and orange grove. So, it's the largest producer of cattle. And I want to say almost, at least Ocala area is one of the largest when it comes to horses. So very country in that sense, the whole central part of it as it goes down. Though it's changing. A lot of homes being built. But, like a lot of us, I think, I always say I speak for Marines. I can't speak for the other branches, but again, I didn't serve. But I think for like most of us, just small town, college was not necessarily an opportunity for me. Of course, later on in life, I learned a lot of different things. I was pretty naive and I really just wanted to get out of it. My family was cattle ranchers and orange growers, so it was pretty hard growing up with my dad. He was a pretty hardcore guy, so anything outside of that was a positive. And so the Marine Corps, and then this is kind of unfair. You asked me this question because I know with Domo, he asked me the same one on the podcast.
He did.
So same answer. Just chicks digs the uniform. It was just the Marine Corps. I always say I became a better Marine when I got out than when I was in. I think a lot of us like that for the service that aren't lifers. You start to really understand and appreciate because you're so young and you haven't really grasped the life yet. It hasn't punched you in the face enough. So, for me, the Marine Corps, all joking aside, was the best. It is the best. And I wanted to be part of the best. And I think I wanted to challenge myself, to the point to where it was just so extreme. And that was my nature. It's always been my nature. And I never fit into the norm of everyone else when it came to that. And the Marine Corps provided that. It provided an opportunity to earn that, which I really, really liked. It, as they say, right, it wasn't given, it was earned. And that was something that really stuck with me. So set aside the fact that the uniforms were good looking, that was the other reason why I joined.
But you bring up a great point about the Marine Corps. All the other branches suffered tremendously with recruiting. And what we found was that the Marine Corps was the one branch that people kept going to. And I think that says a lot about having those high standards, having the ability to earn things. That's why when the Navy took away the high school diploma and the GED to enlist, Yeah, I lost a duty station over it. But you know what? I gained my dignity because I felt like that's just one small thing that you can earn, even if you have to get your GED, to show that you've done something before enlisting into the military. And I think that that's why a lot of people are drawn to the Marine Corps, is because they just have those high standards and they don't take excuses.
Well, I think we yearn for that. You find in civilian world, everybody's yearning for that, right? Through a mentor, through a podcast, right? Through a speaker, through a personal trainer. I think naturally as humans, though we say we don't want to, we want to be pushed and see what our limits are like, because we don't. I think I'll speak for Americans. I don't think we care about ourselves enough to value that. When I'm later coming a motivational speaker and executive leadership coach, I realized that the biggest epidemic or pandemic that we have with people is they just don't value themselves. Corporate marketing and structures of advertising and companies have just really taken away that from us and said, this is what you should look like. This is what you should like. This is what you should wear. And it's really taken away the value of us making our own decisions and feeling like we can push ourselves. And I think the Marine Corps really, stays to tradition, whereas the other branches tried to adjust to quota numbers. Marine Corps says, well, no, we are who we are. This is the spirit of the Corps. This is tradition. Follow suit or get out. And we don't care. And I think there's something to be said about that being, obviously the smallest branch of the military and the most underfunded. And of course, there's the running joke that Marine Corps is not the smartest when it comes to that. It's a lot of brute. But ironically, I think there was just some research done that right now the Marines are excelling in the intelligence sector when it comes to, the drones and all the other factors that are playing into the future of warfare. And again, it just goes back to that structure of discipline. You can argue it all day long, but you put anybody in the format of discipline, structure, and pushing beyond, and they will always look better, feel better, and accomplish more. I mean, it's just
absolutely. In fact, I got in a little trouble for not using a disclaimer. My podcast and everything that I do is in an unofficial off-duty capacity. But when I went to DC and I was speaking at a press conference with Fox News, I said, we need to look at that 2015 study on women in combat. Let's not pretend that there aren't differences between men and women. Let's not pretend that the average man is still physically stronger than the average woman. And in certain job specialties or capacities, let's do a study on which ones need that brute strength. I think that's a good question to ask, and that's a good conversation to have. And hats off to the Marine Corps for being the branch that really pushed back on this and said, no, wait a minute, we need to look at this. We need to study these standards. And, definitely the administration makes mistakes. They're not perfect, but I will say I'm very grateful for Pete Hegseth for saying, no, let's do a study. Let's examine this, because these are things that we need to do. And as you said, I do think that people want to be pushed. There's always this, healthy pushback when you want to empower yourself and you want to have agency. But at the same time, we all want to have somebody that we look up to.
Yeah. And I think, let me correct my statement. I don't think people want to be pushed, but they appreciate after they have been.
Yeah. That's probably a better way to say it.
Right? Yeah. So I think generally, most people, they don't want to get out of bed at 4 a.m. They don't want to do the exercise. They don't want to do training. But I would love to see the stats of the question of how do you feel after you've been pushed and you've done it. And I think that obviously the census would be that everybody feels pretty good for the most part.
Right. So you were in the Marine Corps and you corrected me. Tell me a little bit about recon, because I don't really understand force recon. I don't understand battalion recon. I know special forces now. I know Green Beret. I've had Navy SEALs on my show, but tell me a little bit about recon.
Yeah, well, we're just not Navy SEALs. It's pretty much the best way to explain it. So the operator community is a finicky community unto itself. I was never at tier 1 operator, like high level stuff, like a lot of those guys, and I never claimed to be. I started out with 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines Infantry Division in 29 Palms. I just grunt, and I don't say it to try to bring it down to say and water it down. That just say
infantry is still very quite prestigious.
Yeah. But especially Marine Corps infantry is pretty significant. Yeah. But I mean that in the sense of our community, that I didn't go do all the high speed, low drag stuff. So when I was with 3-4, I had an opportunity to join 5th Force Recon actual force in Japan. And at the time, I think 5th Force was kind of dissipating. There was some funding issues when I was in 9802. So it was really underfunded project. So there weren't a lot of opportunities for 5th Force to go to billets, sniper school, ranger school, all of the things that you want to do when you join those teams. And they were like, no, you're just going to hang out here in Japan and this is what you're going to do. And I was like, well, I could do that with infantry. That's not really fun. Just to say I'm force, and I wouldn't even get my bubble in my wings. So I was like, that doesn't make any sense. I want to go back and let's see what I can do stateside. So I went back stateside after our deployment, and First Recon had some openings. And of course, we tried out and went through RIP, Recon Indoctrination Platoon. And even then, I was part of a weird little unit because we were attached to 1st Mardiv. I went from 29 Palms to Pendleton to Camp Margarita, and they were attached to headquarters because they were so underfunded. They weren't kind of broken off on their own. And it was just Alpha and Bravo. And there was just a handful of us, and we went through a really weird, I guarantee you we're probably one of the only ones that ever do it, but we went through an OJT program. So we didn't even get the chance to go to ARS or BRC. Typical Big Brother, promise you one thing and something else different happens. So anyways, I went with 1st. So there's differences in the sense of what their operating capacity is based on what their mission objectives are. So generally from now, it's all changed now. It's like MARSOC Raiders. And don't even ask me because I don't know anything about it anymore. But at the time, Battalion Recon was what we call Greenside. They were exactly what it was, reconnaissance, gather information. So we were forward units for infantry units going out and gathering intel through cameras or whatever. And then we would bring back that intel to the infantry units to kind of let them know what was going on. But it was this really cool, short black silkies with a bunch of jack dudes running around on the base, working out, hitting the pool all the time. That was pretty much the gist of my career.
It's so interesting how in the military we stratify certain jobs and certain ratings. I mean, I'm 48 years old now, so I have very much less of an ego than I did as a child. And I remember like when I went air crew, I was like, oh, I've got my air crew pin. I went through SEER school. I'm like special because of that, And then it's like you get older and you're like, you know what? The guy that's the cook, the gal that's the yeoman or whatever, admin person, they're just as important in the fight too. And they do just as much in their own way. But we have this way of saying, oh yeah, I was Force Recon, I was Navy SEAL. I mean, those things, don't get me wrong. Those schools and those missions are fucking dangerous. And there's not everybody that can do them. But I sort of see it a little bit differently now as I'm older, as I did when I was younger, where it was like, oh my God, you're like a god,
Yeah, I don't. The operator community is a whole other political thing unto itself, and whole different. That's a whole different rabbit hole. I think looking back on it now, I think you're talking about some of the most effective and amazing athletes in the world is really what you're talking about. You're not talking about a general just athlete that focuses on one type of sport, right? Like a SEAL or a Force Recon or a Raider or MARSOC. I mean, these guys are like athletes beyond athletes. Like you could put any of them in a professional sport and they would dominate, but they could cross train between each one of those sports and the mental fortitude that it took, Now, mind you, going back, I think to your point, I'd like to go back and have my health back versus that ego. And being able to say it, because the funny thing about recon, it's always that I will say when I was in, recon. And it's funny because when you get in these podcasts or you go and do interviews and people are like, oh, you're the recon. They're like, what is that? So you kind of get a little mad and you're like, well, we were before the Navy SEALs, the Navy SEALs came after Marine Recon. Mm-hmm. You get defensive because you're like, we trained with these idiots. Yeah. But
and these are kids that did things that other kids couldn't do. I mean, that's really the bottom line.
All of them are just amazing. I mean, again, just like in all the branches, we make fun of each other, but these guys were, I mean, just top level. So, I mean, I consider myself a pretty strong athlete, and watching some of these guys, you're just blown away at their abilities of how far they can push themselves, both physically and mentally. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing to watch them execute.
Yeah. And that's why truly they do deserve the recognition and the props that they get, is because we do prize. And this kind of goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of the show, which is that we prize standards. We prize people that do hard things. And so when we hear that someone has chosen and volunteered themselves, by the way, to do these things, we put value on that. I think that the thing that I just never want to see get missed is that the guy or the gal that is doing those other jobs that didn't require those things, they also have their own challenges and their own stories to tell. And I sometimes think we tend to almost prize the spec ops almost at the expense of those other stories. And I think that that's why it's important to have podcasts like this, like mine and other veteran podcasts and Dalmo, to be able to tell all the stories that exist out there. Because I think in a way we all have a story and we all do something extraordinary, as I said in my intro. So back to your story. So you are in the Marines, I want to say 3 years. Is that what it was? Or a few, four years. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then you get out and you sort of struggle at first getting out, right? That's kind of how it went.
No, actually, getting out was pretty easy for me. The transition time period was super simple. I didn't have the normal transition problems. And even my health wasn't even a conscious factor at the time. So I got out and got right into, I had to work. I got right into work. The only thing I say I would struggle, if there was a struggle at that time, was just the difference between finding a career of what I was going to do and being naive to the world. The military, you're kind of babied, though right. Everyone doesn't want to say that, but you really are. I mean, you're like a professional athlete. You've got trainers, food, medical resources, bed. You got everything at your fingertips, and you got in the real world and realize that you have to actually pay for that stuff, and you got to go out and get it. So for me, it was just really trying to find a career. That was my big thing of what the future holds for me, because now it's no longer about service to people. It's about how do I become relatively successful and have monetary gain where I can suffice and maybe live a life where I can enjoy, do the things that I want. So, but I was very fortunate. I landed right into finance probably 8 months after I got out, and went right into finance and sales.
Okay. And I forgot to also mention that while you were still in the service, you experienced a very harrowing incident that I think impacted you greatly. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's the catalyst to it all, I guess. The antagonist to the start of the story, one of many. Yeah. So when I was with First Recon, I had a couple of buddies of mine that were state platoon snipers, or they had just finished sniper school there on Pendleton, and that were from 3-4. And they grew up in Utah, and they had a good buddy of theirs, and their parents lived in Corona, California, up the road from where we were at. And so we served together for about 1.5 years, and they were like, hey, let's go up to Matt's and go hang out. His mom's awesome. She's got 20 boys. She'd love to have us up there and cook us food. They're Mormons. We'll sit out there and play basketball, all through the night and laugh and have a good time. Just real wholesome, opportunity. So, versus the normal, we're going to go out and drink and party sort of thought process. We were more like, let's get some good food from mom and, shoot some hoops. And so they went ahead, and I had a motorcycle, and I just kind of came a little afterwards. I needed to wrap some stuff up at the barracks before I got out of there. And I at the time, I guess MS-13 was targeting members of the military for gang initiation. So the way I understand it is that if they killed a member of the military, then they were in the gang. It's kind of their initiation. So
are they? What kind of a gang are they? Are they like a? Are they a Latino gang? Are they a?
Yeah, they're a Latino gang.
Okay.
Yeah, they're pretty, I say, well known in the context of who they are and what they do. They're known for very extreme stuff. So they basically targeted me with a car. I was on a motorcycle. They chased me down with the car, me not knowing what was going on, and they basically just kind of hit me on a motorcycle, and then I came off the motorcycle and caught the corner of a brick house at about 45 miles an hour across my chest. So the easiest way to say it is it basically broke every bone in my upper body. My entire chest plate that holds your whole chest part was snapped in half. And then my collarbone, shoulder blade was broken. And then all of my ribs fractured and broke. So they punctured all my major organs. So basically when I hit it, my ribs crushed in and cut in all the major organs and then punctured into my lungs. And then my left bicep was completely lacerated from the mirror on the car. It sliced it wide open all the way down to my forearm. So set aside, I was bleeding on the inside. I was also bleeding on the outside. And it never really knocked me out. I mean, I literally have told the story a million times, both in this format and in therapy. And, I remember it, just about everything. So I hit the ground, and it was 3 of them. They got out and just started kicking me. So they were kicking all of the ribs and everything, which then led to more, lacerations of all of my organs. And then they thought I was dead. They robbed me, and then they drove off. So because of the gang in the neighborhood, nobody would really help me. So I basically put my right hand over my left bicep, and bleeding out all over the place, and then drowning in my own fluid. I walked 2 blocks to a fire station where there happened to be a doctor on site, and they brought in a helicopter and put me in on the helicopter. And that's when they ran chest tubes to get all the fluid out. And then I flatlined 3 times and throughout a period of that, and then ended up in the hospital, had to learn how to walk, talk, breathe again, sort of thing.
How long was your recovery approximately?
So I was in the hospital. They couldn't bring me to military. I had to stay in Fallbrook Hospital. I was there probably about 8 months in the bed. And because of when your lungs are punctured, you can't go through any kind of surgeries because they can't put you in anesthesia. So I just had to lay there and heal. I never had a surgery from any of that. So I basically just laid in the bed and watched TV for 8 months and slowly kind of re-healed back. So after that, they brought me back to First Recon, and I was kind of just thrown in the barracks with some movies and said, good luck, hope you heal, sort of thing. Because they were at the point 9/11 had just happened. They were operational. There was just so much going on. They didn't have time to take some broke Marine, up to the hospital every day. It was an operational team in Seabees. That was it. So they didn't have some guy to run me up in a van sort of deal. So I just sat there and healed up, and I got in the pool, got in the gym. And then I would say maybe about 6 months after that, I was relatively, I would say, fully operational. I was back to my runs, back to my pull-ups, back to my sit-ups, and I was not medically discharged.
Right. And I remember you saying that you wanted to, in Damo's podcast, that you wanted to go back to duty, but then the gunny that you worked for said no. And I remember Damo kind of said, well, that was a good thing that he did that. But did you, this is one of the questions I had as I was listening. Did you fight him at the time and say, no, I'm ready? Or was it more like you accepted it and said, he's right, it's time to move on?
Yeah, that's a good question. So during that moment, and again, some of it's a little fuzzy, but you have to understand the amount of trauma I went through, the amount of pain. It's always hard to kind of tell, because sometimes it depends on the conversation. Some days it'll trigger and it'll hit me, and I'll just be a hot mess during these. And then some days I just roll right through it and it's not a problem. And it depends on the question sometimes, and the direction, So I think during that moment, I didn't fight it because he was so sincere in his delivery because what happened is when I went in there with Gunny, we had a relationship already. And, he saw it, just like what's really great about the military is there are a few people you run across that see, and hopefully in life, that see value in you that you don't see. And he was one of the first people that saw something in me that was more than what I would have ever saw. Yep. And I think that's what he was trying to tell me, is he was saying, listen, that's great. And you can go down range and you can get your ribbons and you can be super cool combat Marine. Sure. That'll be awesome. He's like, but you're not understanding what you went through and you lived. There's got to be a reason for that. And that means you've got to do something different. So in combination with my second chance at life and Gunny's conversation, I felt almost compelled or responsible to go, you know what, maybe it's not go down there and be a bullet sponge. Maybe it's go and make some kind of impact. And again, I was so young, I had no clue what that even meant. And of course, I don't think I mentioned this on Damo's podcast, but whenever he, at the time when I was kind of arguing it a little bit or being a little snippy, smart aleck Lance Corporal about it, he was like, well, go over there and grab that box on the over there in the corner. And I brought the box over, and it had DOA Johnson on it. And because the second time I had flatlined, they had called back to command and said that I didn't make it because I was dead for so long. So he was like, "You're dead." He's like, looked at me. He's like, "You're dead." He's like, "Why would I send you to die again?" He's like, "You need to get out of here." It's just
crazy that somebody would have said that. Like I think Damo had the same reaction that I am having, which is like, nobody in the Navy will tell you that. Like, I remember when I was ready to get out at NATO, my detailer was like, "No, Teresa, there's all these milestone jobs. You can do it." And it's like, there's this like need to want to feel needed and feel valued. And it's like, I wanted to keep holding on. Meanwhile, I had a coach that I was talking to off duty, and she's like, let it go. It's your time to go. Leave, And I almost feel like the people that were telling me to let it go were the people that really knew me and knew my heart and knew what was best for me, because I was getting to a point as a public affairs officer where I was starting to have a crisis of conscience, where the things that I was seeing that we were promoting, or the things that I saw that we weren't being transparent about, I couldn't speak up on. And so that was where like the line in the sand was getting further apart. And my friends and my family and the people that knew me saw it, and was like, the people that really know me, when they found out I was getting out, they were like, good, finally. But my competitive spirit, can do, I want to be needed, just kept kicking in. So that's why I asked, because I bet that was a decision.
I think, as you know, and again, we sometimes our vision gets a little convoluted with the brainwashing in the military. Each unit is just like a different department of a company. And some departments run a lot better based on the teams, and some don't. And some have an open way of communication leadership, and some don't. And I will say, with First Reconnaissance, the unit, the community, you're a different entity than the Marine Corps unto itself. Just these teams are just different things. And I think during that part of that community that I was a part of at the time, I wasn't with the infantry community anymore. I was part of this community, and this community promoted value in going forward and realizing that the military doesn't have to be the only book that you write. And I would have to say in that community too, that, sometimes we're only perceived for our physical attributes when it comes to those type of communities, when in fact the intelligence level far exceeds a lot. No matter if no degree or not, takes a certain type of intelligence. And again, as I've learned later on in business and in entrepreneurship, there's difference between IQ and EQ and different types of intelligent levels and things that you approach. And I think if I had to look back, not speaking for him, but just because he's not around anymore, I would say I think he just saw something in me that was of more value that could be added to the world than going out there and going down range. And a good leader is eventually at some point was an amazing follower. And I think I just followed my leader accordingly, listened to him, and didn't pass my own judgments and direction. And here we are.
Yeah, no, I love it. So you get out, and you said it was a pretty easy transition. But then, and you were working you did a number of jobs. Like I was catching some of it as I was listening to the podcast. You worked for Google, you worked for mortgage companies. That was, I think, the big one that I caught, is that you were building mortgage companies and doing lending and other things. But tell me a little bit about what caused the trajectory from making all this money, and please correct me if I'm paraphrasing the story incorrectly, to say going homeless.
So that one falls a line more in just entrepreneurship. I mean, when you go to build a business, you go into, there's different stages of that thought process. I would say during that stage, I was a phenomenal salesperson, really bad businessman. So there's businessman, entrepreneur, and sales, right? And there's different formats with that and different stages, or some never leave that stage, some find and then get another person in that part. So during that time, I was an amazing salesperson. I thought that also meant that I'm a good business person or entrepreneur, and I wasn't. So I had started my first business when I was 26, and I laid the structure of sales, but there's all these other pieces that I didn't realize everybody else was doing that I thought was easy. And it was a challenge, so when the recession happened in 2008, you can't sell something that doesn't exist anymore. So that was a really weird business to be in, because, a lot of industries struggle, but you can still sell the product. In that, the product was just gone. So you had no resources to sell mortgage lending, because finance structure, mortgaging, financing homes was just, it is completely gone. You couldn't call somebody and be like, oh, I've got that. They were like, nobody was lending. So when you had, $300 million in total sales and warehouse lines and all this money, and then all of a sudden, your expenses are based off of those closing, and then all of a sudden doors are shutting, businesses are going out, you just can't feed it. And it's a big train running really, really fast. And of course, there's all these people that are living off of this. So it was a combination of that. And I think, again, looking back at it at the time, I wouldn't have admitted it, but I think never addressing the trauma, never addressing all the things that I went through, it just kind of all happened at once. And I just didn't care. I lost that taste for it all. Didn't care about the money, didn't really care about the business, just got real numb. And then it was just the system is developed to push you down a little bit further. It was another brick, another brick, another brick. And again, in the community, right, military community, if someone's handing you a brick and you're treading water and they put another brick on, there's someone else next to you either telling you can do it, or there's someone else that takes that brick and rotates it around. Or if you start to go under, maybe they let you drown a little bit, but they'll bring you back. Life is like, let's just throw some more bricks on there, and we'll send you all the way to the bottom and just kill you right off the bat. So you don't really have that option. So I think just what happened is life just started stacking some more bricks up on me, and I went all the way to the bottom. Just didn't care. So
Damo did not ask you again, like I told you before the call, there were just questions in my mind as I was listening to the podcast did you, and I'm sure you've been asked this before, but did you not know about veteran services, or were they not available?
No, I didn't know anything. And to be honest with you, I really didn't care to know anything. When I got out, I got out. It wasn't, it was a different time. Now, obviously education has happened a lot over the years. But for me, I could care less about Big Brother anymore. I mean, there's a whole other side of the military. I'm sure you alluded to it just a little bit in your conversation. There's a whole other factor to it that we don't like to talk about because that doesn't sell. To me, I didn't want to be a part of that anymore. I wanted to pave my own path. To do what I had to do was a complete opposite of what I was doing. And I had to go out and make my own decisions and my own path with that. And I'll be danged if I was going to hop back on a system. I say the military is the most socialist platform defending a capitalist system, because it literally, I mean, it really is. It literally fit. I always kind of joke. I've been on Fox quite a few times and been interviewed, and with Pete and some other stuff. And I always kind of laugh because I'm like, what's interesting? If I was running for office and I was on the blue side, I would be the biggest advocate of the military ever. And I would use that as my biggest format to show how provable that the system works, because everybody loves it, right? Even the Republican side loves it. Military. And I'd be like, that's great, because that's the most effective socialist platform in the world that happens to dominate all other countries. And it's a whole thing. And when I joke
that it's a jobs program sometimes, and nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, it's super true. And when you get out to the real world, now you're a part of that capitalist platform, and you don't realize how challenging and hard that is, and you have to go through it. So, it was. I wanted to pave my own path and do my own thing. I didn't need Big Brother's help anymore.
So even when you were homeless, living in a tent, you had suits on a hanger on the tree, you didn't think to yourself, I could at least get some VA disability. I could at least go and get my DD 214 and go to a VSO. I mean, that wasn't even it. I mean, that just shocks me, because it's so ingrained in us GWAT generation, which I know you are as well. But now with the people who are getting out, I mean, you go through TAPS class, and the entire TAPS class is about, okay, you're now a veteran. These are the services that are available to you. And so it sounds like that wasn't even in your mind at that time, that was something you would want to do or could do.
No, no, I didn't think about that at all. That chapter is closed. So, you can't hate a system and then ask the system to support you. I don't know. That's a little hypocritical. I mean, being an entrepreneur, in my thought process was, I'm on my own. I can't tap into my community anymore. And again, my logic was different at the time. I mean, that's a really good question, because I have to be a little honest in this part right here. So at that time, let me dig back to that. So at that time, why would I ever in a million years ask civilian taxpayers to support one of the most highly elite trained individuals that failed at doing what everybody else does that didn't join the military, and then ask for a fucking
I guess because it's still trauma, like you still went
trauma. I failed at business. Do you know how many people in the civilian world get hurt? How many people lose their jobs? How many children get abducted, how many families lose their kids. They don't have
absolutely.
resources just to reach out and make a phone call and get it.
They also didn't join the military. I don't know.
But I was done. I was done. Like that's how my brain works. Just yes, I'm a Marine, but that chapter is closed. I wasn't holding on that forever. I'm an entrepreneur now. I got to suck it up like the regular people.
Right. No, I appreciate your attitude, and I appreciate you engaging me on this dialogue, because this is a conversation that nobody wants to have in the veteran community. And it's something that I think Secretary Collins and a lot of those guys in the administration are trying to get after too, because I do think that the VA system is also getting abused. I mean, that's no secret. There's no secret about that. And you see it as I go through this process, and I'm on these veteran disability pages, and I see all the things that you can claim, and I see the ways in which the system is working. And I think that, like I said, having that honest conversation about women in combat, let's have an honest conversation about VA disability. And I don't think that people are ready to have that conversation because of exactly what you just said. I was the most elite fighting guy out there, and now I'm going to go back and ask for a handout. Fuck that. And so I get that attitude too. And I don't really, to be honest with you, T.Shane, I don't know where I fall on this yet, because it's such a hard conversation.
Well, how does this, and as we say in the South, I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth. So you're asking me based on conversation during that time, and that was my thought process. So during that time, that would have been my approach. And I built my speaking platform on that approach. But I'm going to tell you, so I ended up becoming 100% disabled later on, like almost 18 years later. And I fought this conversation because I was with CV. I spoke as a brought-in speaker of CVA and all these organizations as a speaker. And I built my whole platform on that. We need to stop being a bunch of wussies, and we need to get out there and make it happen. So one day I was doing a speaking engagement, and I wrapped up, and I want to say it was old first sergeant came up to me, and he says, "Have you ever filed? You've been through a lot of pain. Have you ever filed for disability?" And I was like, "No, I mean, I didn't go down range and lose an arm or something. Why would I do that?" He says, "Let me ask you something." And and I'm gonna tell you, it made perfect sense. He says, "You ever worked for a major corporation before?" And I said, "Well, yeah, obviously, And he said, "So let's say you work at Verizon. Let's say you're working at Verizon and you're going up on one of the towers to fix something." He says, "Let's just say, for instance, you're on that tower and a rope breaks. Nobody's fault. No, nothing intentional. You fall down and break your back." Okay. And he says, "Now, are there programs within Verizon, let's say workman's comp, for example, that you could file to support you during that time because of what happened? Does it make you any less of a person to file for that? Would legal representation tell you that you need to do that because you have a family to support?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "So that's exactly what it is."
Yeah. But see, it's so interesting how you've gone to both sides. And I have too. With this conversation.
Yeah. So it was, but I also think, again, there's so many different layers to that. I never paid attention to it enough until I had my daughter. And then I realized, wait a minute, I've got some, because I never addressed the trauma. And then when I dug into the trauma and realized, like, wait a minute, I only have, 30-40% use of my right arm. I only have 30-40% use of my lungs. I'm literally daily losing the functionality in my hands and can't even use my hands almost, let's say, 60% of the time because I'm losing my fine motor skills. My health is deteriorating I literally just met with the VA last week, and the doctor was like, "You better figure something out because you just took 25 years off your life. And, so the regular expectancy, you're not going to be there. So you need to figure it out." And then all those other factors start going like, man, like I got to think about my kid and my life and where I'm at and the decisions I'm making and so on and so forth. So I think, again, like life has seasons and different things. I don't disagree that the system's being abused by those that just say, "Oh, I got a little knee hurt," and they walk to pick up the stapler.
But it's not even that. It's this whole infrastructure around getting nexus letters and finding doctors that you can pay to say whatever you want. I mean,
well, that's company capitalism.
I know it's just crazy. I mean, I don't know if you followed. There was a story in Warhorse recently from the guys there, and they talked about the VA claims centers. Like, you can pay companies that are not VSOs and they'll do all these things for you. And I'm not saying that none of that's illegitimate. I'm not saying all of it's illegitimate. I don't know where to fall on this issue, to be honest. And that's the most honest thing that I can say. Yes, there are people who abuse it and there are people who need it. And I think that it's very difficult to see the differences between the two. It's not an objective issue. It's a very subjective issue. And different doctors do say different things. We all know that. You can go to the doctor and one doctor will say you have this, another doctor will say you have that. It's the same thing with a lot of different types of advisors. And so you really have to, it comes down to your own personal ethics and your own morals and doing what is best for you and for your family. And that's really how I've had to settle on that issue. But so back to where you were. So you were in this very precarious place where things things went south. You're not going to look for anyone to take you out of it, but you found a way. You found a way to get out of it. And tell us a little bit about how you did that.
Yeah. So I was living in the woods, getting my clothes dry cleaned because I had just enough money to do that. I didn't look the part, but they were hanging up. It's kind of funny when you said that because I can remember back when they were like hanging in the plastic on the trees, and it's like somebody was like, "Man, that's the most well put together homeless guy in the woods." Just fun, it wasn't funny at the time, but it's kind of funny looking back at it now. But yeah, and like the story I tell is the story of entrepreneurs more than the story of veterans. I think, for me, it was just a time that you had to humble yourself, rebuild, grow, and determine whether you wanted to be the rest that quit or the one that didn't. And so I went back to the basics. I love reading. So I went back to, I know a Marine that reads, but I went to reading books and finding the books that stimulated me. And there was a book that was called How to Get Rich by Felix Dennis. And Felix Dennis he owned Maxim magazine. I don't think he's alive anymore. I think I mentioned that on Dama's podcast.
You did talk about him.
Yeah. And I just loved his demeanor when it came to his book, because like I mentioned on there, you open the book and it's got these checks inside of him of all the deposits he's made. And he tells his story about how he lost his girlfriend because she went with his best friend because he got a brand new car and he had no money. And this is a great, great story. and it just really put it into context, like, all right, I got to get my life together, and read the book. And so the only thing I knew how to do was mortgages. Only thing I knew that made a lot of money was mortgages that I knew how to do versus selling drugs. So I decided to kind of get myself back into it, and it was pretty challenging. And then, of course, fast forward, I'm going to a Dunkin' Donuts. I'm using their free Wi-Fi, looking like I got my life together. It's funny because during that time when I would do interviews with either real estate agents or mortgage companies that I wanted to work for, they'd be like, all right, well, let's put together an interview, and I'd always be like, well, that'd be great. Let's meet at coffee at the Dunkin' Donuts. It's halfway between me and you. But in fact, it was just because I lived and I didn't have a car and couldn't get to the interview. But so later on, I ended up building a $300 million a year in sales company out of a Dunkin' Donuts and a laptop, jumping back into the
That's
mortgage.
insane.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's just crazy. And it just shows you like the power of doing what you got to do to get by and to figure it out. And I agree. This is more an entrepreneur or a story of scrappiness and grit than it is a story of being a veteran and what resources we have as a veteran or no. This is a story that anyone can grab onto. And so now you're at that place, and tell us a little bit about how this parlayed into, you did the run for homelessness. And again, you had been homeless, so you understood the plight of homelessness. And you mentioned something else in the show about how the homeless don't really have services or things to pull them out of it. They have really everything stacked up against them to stay in that state. Can you tell us a little bit about what you meant by that?
Yeah, what's the first thing that you get when you're born?
When you're born?
Yeah. What's the most important thing your parents spend time trying to do before you're born?
Before you're born, making sure that you're healthy, taking prenatal vitamins. I'm probably not going to guess the right thing.
That's okay. Yeah, that's the point, right? What's maybe a better way to ask that is, what's the most important thing given to you that they take the time to try to figure out when you're born?
I would say love, affection, looking you in the eyes, making sure that you're valued and that you're seen and known.
It's your name. Your name. Right? What's the first thing the military does when you go to boot camp?
Dehumanizes you.
Okay. They take your name away. Right? Why do they do that?
Because they don't want you to think as an individual anymore. They want you to think as a team.
You got it. So when you become homeless, do you ever meet a Bob?
No.
You ever meet a homeless Bob? What do you meet?
A homeless person. That's all they are.
So when you take the most important thing that the people that loved you the most at the beginning and you just rip that away from somebody, they lose everything. So that community doesn't have resources because they're not treated like a Bob or a Lisa, right? So when the news goes up and they want somebody to look for somebody,
so true,
a little girl on, what do they put? Little Lisa Kirkpatrick, right? But when there's a homeless person, just homeless person, right? Homeless man, homeless woman, right? So you rip away the most important thing. Your name is the time, hopefully, for most, I understand there's situations, but the most when two people pour the best parts physically and mentally of themselves into this little human. And then they, for one positive time in their life, whether they argue, get divorced, do whatever, during that moment, they're both sitting there going, what can we call this little human that we love so much for the rest of their lives? That'll signify my love and your love, and we'll put it together and we'll pour it into this amazing pieces of us. Right? They sit around, they think about it, and they think about it. And that name has got a reason, right? Like usually if you ask your parents, why'd you name me this? They'll have a story. What was this? It was this. Won't be like, I just saw it on TV one day and thought, man, you'd be a great little John, right? Like there's something significant about that. And when you get into the homeless community and people see it, they don't see it as John or Lisa or Steve or once they were little children that someone loved or cared about. They're just a byproduct of a very broken system, and people just go, I don't want to be that.
Right. And people are just doing everything they can to get away from that person.
You got it. And as a motivational speaker, because that was my career to transition into that, I thought it was interesting that when I got into that community, that nobody had names, and names is what identifies us. It's what makes us who we are, right? Like otherwise we're a system and we're just got our social security number. And so I kind of got into that because I really wanted to, as a speaker, again, in the context of motivational speaker, I wanted to be able to deliver a message to the people who need it the most, not the corporate ticket that paid $1,500 to come in and see me stand on the stage, but to the person that will never get a high profile speaker come in and share an experience where they were once there, and at least inspire them to see that even though you make the choices, I want to show you that you can get out of those. And that to me, what that goal was. And I really wanted to, as I ran across America, the run was a hook. It was just to get media involved. But the key was to get into these places and say, Steve, I'm Shane. I was once like you, and now you can be like me. You're right. And I'm, again, watering it down. But that was the gist of the stories. And that was really the context that I wanted to deliver. And you know what was crazy? As a military community forgot what the hell they had accomplished. You'd go in and sit down with someone and they'd be like, yeah, I was a Marine and now I'm here and I'm whatever. And I'm like, oh, you were part of the 0.001% of the world that decided to do something more elite than anyone's ever dreamed of, 270 plus years of complete domination. And they're like, wow, yeah. Like, dude, you've already been the best. So all you got to do is just do it all over again. It's super easy. You've already done it. Most people, the biggest challenge, they've never even seen it or done it. You've already done it. And that was really my objective. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little heated about that. But it was really just like, I really wanted them to feel inspired and bring their freaking names back. And it was a project that I actually went over when I went through Lubbock, Texas. And there was a tent city there. And I came up with this really super cool idea. I wish it would have taken off more, and I still think it can. But when you write a book, what's the first thing you do?
Figure out what the book is about.
All right. So
when see a publisher, see an editor.
Yeah. You sound very officer-ish. Structural SOPs. Okay. So let's get back to a little bit of the emotional side like you were doing earlier with our name. So you read a book, but you want to know the book is read by the author.
Right. And you want to feel like you read a book because you want to feel a certain feeling or you want to be inspired. Yep.
And when I write a book and I sign it, I always sign it with my name. Okay. So at the time, this was many years ago. Now everybody can be a writer, but I went to the organization, and Texas A&M was close by. And I said, it'd be really cool. I was like, how many of these homeless people in Tent City do you think's got a really cool story?
All of them.
Like, all of them, right? So I was like, what if we had Texas A&M students come over and they basically did ghostwriting for each one of these people? Then the marketing team and the sales team at the school basically did a project where they packaged up the books and then did them on Amazon, right? And then we raised money to do it. And then what we did is we got them their own book, because once they become a published author, everybody knows their name. And now we bring their identity back with their name, and they sit out in front of their little tent house, and the community comes in and buys their book. And they are now no longer homeless so-and-so. They are Bob,
now a person with a story.
Author. You got it.
Yeah.
You got it. And I thought, man, wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be super cool? Like to do that?
It would be.
Yeah. So that's kind of how those runs started.
Well, I'm with you. I'm a huge follower of a YouTuber. His name is Mark Laeta. He has a YouTube channel called Soft White Underbelly, and I highly recommend you check it out. And all he does, do you know him? Of his work? Yeah, 6 million subscribers. I just checked the other day because I was listening to it, and I was like, I wonder how big he's gotten over the years. And he's been doing this for about 5 years, and that's exactly what he does. Is he gives homeless, using his, like what you did with your, it reminds me very similar to what you did with your run. He has a hook. He was an advertising giant in the advertising world, and knows how to package, knows how to make somebody look dramatic, knows how to get you to click on that thumbnail. And all you do is you see a dramatic thumbnail, but then you watch the story and you realize, like, these are just normal, everyday people who unfortunately went down that road and was never able to get out of that life and out of those people, out of being surrounded by those people and all those other things. And I mean, that's why your story is such a testament to strength and to growth and to grit, because you could have been very easily in that. And I always think about that for myself too. I could just have been pregnant and broke and homeless. I mean, I didn't have to enlist in the Navy. And so I never take for granted what I have. And as I don't think anyone should,
Yeah. There's a saying that was said on a lot of those tours. We're all one crisis away from being homeless.
Totally. 100%.
One job loss, one medical, we're always dancing on the line.
Oh, I'd be devastated if something were to happen to my husband. I think about it all the time, actually. It gives me anxiety. So I try not to think about it too much, but yes. So you do the run, and then did that parlay into the speaking career, or were you doing the speaking career at the same time?
I was doing speaking kind of prior to, but just maybe a little more corporate structure. The idea behind it was I really wanted to give back in my message, because again, that digs back to my second chance at life. So it was just sometimes in life, and I'm sure that not everybody experiences this, but sometimes we're given a talent that we don't always want. But it's a responsibility due to certain things. And I was given that. I personally don't think I'm a great speaker, but a lot of people seem to think I am. And so I thought, maybe I should stop being so narcissistic and thinking of myself, and maybe think of other people, or think that who cares if I think it, if it's inspiring other people, then I need to do that. And that's kind of what I did on the speaking side of it. And and that's what kind of sparked it. And, of course, it just kind of picked up from there.
Yeah. And then you're just not only doing that, and now we're going to parlay to the other thing. I mean, not only have you done the public speaking, not only did you do this like major initiative for running to raise awareness about homelessness, then, and this is where I first learned your story, really, when your team reached out to me, I started Googling you, and I saw all this stuff about, as your shirt says, Big Guns Coffee and your daughter. And I'm like, what is this? And then I learned a little bit more about it. So give me sort of the backstory on what this business is and why you started it, and what you hope to accomplish with it.
Yeah, so it was a culmination of our last 50 minutes talking. It really it got to this point to where I realized the impact that I was making was minimal, and that when I started to I ran across America 3 times, I'd kind of done this format a couple different ways, and then I during COVID I transitioned to doing world record push-ups, and each year was some kind of cause, something to help raise awareness, to do whatever. Well, one year that wasn't as so much media didn't grab around it, which was weird. But one year I did a run where I did it for teen homelessness, and with this organization called the Pink Bow Foundation. And what was interesting is how I found, like in Florida, in Orlando, Orange County, there were over 3,000 homeless teens at any given moment. And I came across this one teen where she was a straight A student, valedictorian, and she was living in a tent in the middle of the woods. And I was just really blown away, realizing like, oh my God, this isn't just drug, alcohol addiction or problems. Like, this is a systematic approach to our system of unit family here. And it, as you mentioned, it gave me massive anxiety with my daughter. She had been part of these runs and this stuff with me. And of course, I've always been a super involved dad, but I think it just really slapped me in the face and was like, wait a minute, maybe I'm not here for them. Maybe I'm here for her, which is, you would think, is a logical thing, but I guess I just assumed. And I had focused on writing this book called Done by 2:30, and it was really starting to teach, senior level management and executive leadership to be better CEOs of their home than they are their business. Because in America, we spend billions of dollars to become connected with complete strangers, yet we have no structural format to become connected with our partners. There's no drip campaign. There's no CRM. There's no follow-up campaign. There's nothing that says, oh, I'm going to call, no communication training that goes through it. Like, if you want to communicate to a random stranger to take money out of their pocket, you can find stuff on YouTube all day long.
So I can't wait to have Jason Redman on my show. He did a book with his wife, and I was just talking to him the other day, and just can't wait. That's what we're going to get into is how do we do that side of the puzzle as well. So
and I didn't do so well on the partner side, but I did really well with my kiddo, and it was just that moment where I was like, oh my God, I don't want her in the streets. I don't want her to think that I wasn't around. And it was more fear-based at the time. So anyways, I write the book. I talk about that. I come downstairs. My kiddo's 6. She's writing all over the place, drawing, doing all kinds of stuff. And she had been with me on these runs and on stage. And so I will say there's maybe a tad bit conditioning there. And she says, Dad, I want to start a business. Said, yeah, you want to start a business? She said, yeah. I said, you don't want to do dance or gymnastics? She says, no, I want to be like you, and I want to build a business. And I think, we laugh because it is funny. And I think what happened is most people laugh and then it's funny.
And and then they just put their kid back into those.
And then that was it. Mm-hmm. And I think the difference for me is I just listened and I was like, okay. And I said, well, what do you want to do? And she was like, I don't know. She's like, I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you some time. You come up with the name and the logo and what you want to do. You let me know. And I said, whatever it is, I promise you, we're going to just do it. I don't care what it is, right? I don't care if it's unicorns, whatever. We'll figure it out. We'll sell some unicorns. I don't know. We'll figure it out. And thank God it was not unicorns, but she came down and it was probably 30 minutes later. She tells the story better than I do. So she says, I came back 30 minutes later and Big Guns Coffee was on the piece of paper is how she tells it. And it was a little coffee mug with a little muscle on it. And I said, why do you want to call it Big Guns Coffee? She says, well, Dad, she's like, coffee is the most important thing in people's day when they start out. For most people that don't drink tea is how she says it. And she says, not everybody can do a bunch of push-ups like you and feel strong, but maybe this coffee will make them feel that way about their day. And I was like, that's pretty good.
That's an idea, actually.
That's a good one.
So true.
Yeah.
So that's a good story.
So we ran with it and we built a coffee business.
Wow. So how many years ago was that?
That was almost 5 years now.
Okay. So how's the business doing? Like, is it something that you are constantly having to keep after, or what is it like now?
It's like I mentioned on Dama, we're in the weeds right now. So we went from a little fun idea to the world's leading hydroponic indoor coffee farm in the world. We've launched in 900 stores total. Well, actually, we just landed with Home Goods in 1,100 stores literally 2 days ago. Actually, after Damo's podcast the following day, we landed it. So now I guess we're like 2,000 stores across the United States. I have no idea how I'm going to get the money to make it all work, entrepreneurship wise. We're leveraged out the gills with it. We're on every TV platform, Fox Business. We're just getting inundated.
I love it.
my list is 4 pages full, and I still am a dad. So it's awesome. It's great. And I get to do it with my kiddo. I mean, we do it all the time. We hang out. I don't even care if it fails. We have so much fun doing this stuff together and going on TV and prepping. We lead the Shark Tank next week for our audition with Shark Tank next week.
I love it.
We fly up. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just really cool. We fly to Amsterdam later this year, and Germany. And I mean, it's just great. Yeah.
So this is your full-time gig now, is the coffee company.
Yeah. So I kind of intertwine it all together. Like I leave. So when we get back from our Shark Tank audition, I head to go do a speaking engagement. I still do some speaking stuff. And of course, this all kind of goes together. So, when I go talk to organizations, Charli goes with me, and she'll speak. She's hired as a speaker now, which is cool. So we kind of do it together. We do our thing. Yeah. So it's all part of it because coffee's great because everybody likes coffee. So no matter where you go, somebody wants to buy it. So if we go speak and we do it together, we sell some coffee.
You're just a master salesman. There's very few people that I talk to that I can say that about. My buddy Karen Mavis is that way as well. And I had her on my show. And there's just some people that just have it. And that's what it was. You had the gift of being able to tell a story, to understand, like you said, the hook, like what's going to bring people to come, and then doing the work, having the grit to actually follow through on all these projects. Not very few people do this. And everybody could, but they don't. Why do you think people don't do what you're doing?
I want to sound like every other interview, and I want to say they just don't believe in themselves enough. But to be honest with you, I don't really believe in myself that much.
Right. I don't believe in myself either. And I put myself out there all the time.
Yeah. So I don't think it's that. I think in this situation, so generalizing, I think, for me, I'm a father more than anything. And I don't want my little girl, I'm projecting a lot of my fears. So I project a lot of my fears and failures that I don't want her to do. So when I just do it. Yeah. I think most people don't do it because they don't value themselves enough. And to be honest with you, like most people's partners suck or their friends suck. They don't have the right people to really push them past it, to help them. Yeah. I think generally people are very selfish, and misery loves company. And when you're around, I think it's cliche, but it is true. When you don't surround yourself with people that see the same thing and think you're a psychopath, it makes it challenging. Because look, people ask me, my daughter, we joke about it all the time. She's like, Dad, you're the most introverted person I've ever met. She's like, you don't even like people. You don't even want to be around people. And I'm like, I know, you're right. Like, I can't stand this stuff. I'm like, but we have an objective and we have a goal, and maybe I don't want to do it, but just because I don't want to do it doesn't mean
I don't do it.
Yeah. So I think that's probably a big one for people, is they think because they don't want to do it, then, I'm just not going to do it. It's like, no, you still got to brush your teeth. You still got to eat right. I don't have to like it. And Marine Corps taught me that. We still got to get it done. We can complain and we don't like it, but it's still going to get done.
You still got to do it. And that's so true. I mean, when I talk to even like, super high profile people on my show, I find they're just as insecure as the rest of us. They have the same issues. They have the same challenges. And so that's why it's always amazing to me. It's like, well, why did they do it? And I think you're right. A lot of it is around like who you surround yourself with. I'm on a group chat now with all the people who went to DC and did the Hegseth advocacy. And it's just like it's really cool. It's like me, Mandy Feit. She's like the Red Hill lead family spokeslady. They just got a huge pay. I wouldn't say a huge payout, actually. No, I would say that they need to appeal that decision. But they did get at least the courts agreeing that they were, poisoned by the drinking water in Hawaii. And those are just like really trailblazing people. That's my point, is like, I have this group chat now with people that are just blazing trails and are pushing the envelope, but you have to intentionally put yourself in those places and think that you deserve to be there. And so there is a little bit of this hubris, but at the same time, there's a lot of insecurity that goes with it too. So there's a ton.
And there's a saying that always remained, John Wayne would say, is courage is being scared to death and getting up on the horse and riding anyways. And I think, I think that for the audience, I think that's a general context to take. I think the part that would fire me up and get me angry would be what kind of father, and again, I can't speak being a mother because I'm not a mom and I don't have a boy, but as a father to a little girl, I don't understand what kind of father would sit around and not do it.
Right.
I don't understand that. That to me does not compute, because that is where the angry Marine will come out in my logic, because, yeah, okay, great. But when it comes into the fact of fear, there's one thing I teach my daughters: you will never allow that cancer to get into you. You will never allow fear to seek into you and change your mindset and make you make decisions you shouldn't make. You will get up in front of that TV. You will act confident, because you are by far one of the most intelligent, amazing women in the world. Let me tell you something. My daughter checked me about 2 weeks ago with this, because I lost track of this a little bit. And I said to me, what was it doing? She went up and sold like the executives of this major food company, went and found them on the floor and brought them back. It was insane. And I said, Charli, how do you, we were going back, and even though I'm always like, you can do this, I even caught myself. I was so in awe of her. I said, how did you do that? And she's like, what do you mean? How did I do that, Dad? And I was like, how did you just went and did that? She's like, do you not remember when I was a little kid? She was like, every day we went to school, you would make me scream that I'm strong, powerful, amazing, and wonderful. And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, I did do that, And she was like, you made me so strong and powerful that I know why I'm here and what I'm doing. And I was like, I got schooled, like I took a step back, and I was like, and I didn't hesitate. I went right to it, and I was like, you are right. You are absolutely right. And I apologize for even questioning that. And that's really what it comes down to. So today, in today's capacity, I fight for my kiddo, man. That's what you do.
I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. I'm so motivated. I'm motivated. About to go to the gym after this. So I'm sure I'll probably do a good workout. But where can people find you if they're want to have more information, they want you to come speak at one of their events, or they want some coffee? Where are the ways to find you?
Yes, ma'am. So as me, T.Shane brand, tshaneinspires.com, and at T.Shane Johnson for all social media. For coffee for Charli and I, it's biggunscoffee.com, and on social media at Big Guns Coffee.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much for doing the show with me. I've had a great time, good conversation. I think we're very like-minded, and it's nice to talk to somebody who just thinks outside the box and does what you got to do to get things done and to make things happen. So really appreciate your time. I will say goodbye backstage and just go full screen here for just a moment, but thank you again. Really appreciate this.
Of course. My pleasure.
All right, guys, that's a wrap for this week. Next week, I have 3 guests. Monday, I have Robin. I'm terrible with names right now, but Robin, who is an Army, used to be in the Army. She's a comedian. You guys love her. She's been on my show before. And then on Wednesday, I'm having Bill Brown, Navy SEAL. He's coming back on the show. He will be bringing one of his clients who is asking the Secretary of the Navy to take a look at their appeal and their ongoing case. So we'll be talking about that. That's going to be a rather difficult conversation. But then the very next day, I have another difficult conversation to discuss the Ferris Doctrine. I will be having on a former military member who unfortunately got a C-section that did not go as planned. And so we will go into that story as well. But as I always say, when we close out these calls, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye now. Have a great weekend.